Hey guys, Cameron for Awkward, Season 5, Episode 16, Best Friends for Never. And I was really looking forward to this episode, but I have to say that ever since, the show's come back from its second half of the season, I never know what to expect. Because while we do have an arc this season, I don't think there's been as consistent of an arc. It's been more of just seeing how these characters have been doing in the past year. And this episode I really did enjoy, but there were a lot of things that really pissed me off. I'm not going to lie. There were a lot of things that, especially because the final season, really pissed me off, and I am going to get into, but let's just get into this episode because for the most part I did enjoy it, but there were a lot of things that I really wish they would have done differently, and let me just get into it. So I really like the way this episode started. I will say that we see Jenna and Luke are making out. Luke tells her that they're, because as we know, at the end of last week's episode, Jenna and Luke decided that they are officially going to be a couple, but right away Luke basically tells her that for work, they had an idea bin, and Luke lies and says they were distracted talking about ideas, and Jenna asks why he can't just tell him the truth, and he says no one knows they like each other. She asks him if he's embarrassed of her, and she says she's done this before and knows how this goes, and she's not interested. He says he's not embarrassed of her, he just wants her to be taken seriously, and reminds her that she was the one who thinks she's there because of him, and since he's the second-in-year editorial fellow, he's technically her superior, and he doesn't want people to think because of them dating, she might be getting special treatment, and he says she's just starting out and hasn't gotten anything published. She says it's not from a lack of trying, it's that all the ideas she has keeps getting rejected, and he says it took him the entire summer to get a good idea, and eventually it will happen, and this is the best thing for both of them, and basically is going to try to keep their relationship a secret, which I will say is a good idea. I can totally understand why Luke wants to do that. Obviously, he doesn't want them to think that, he's trying to make Jenna look good, and, that Jenna gets any special treatment because she's his girlfriend. I totally understand that. So Jen then sits down. Oph says her and Ethan have been spending a lot of time together. I do have to say, this was the episode where I'm really starting to like Oph as a character. I mean, she's very funny. She really has these really interesting stories, and Jenna wonders if Ethan is reconsidering his sexuality based on what Oph is saying, and she says she wants to wait till summer is over to ask him. Jenna realizes if Oph is keeping a secret, then maybe it is best to keep her and Luke's relationship a secret, and Lizzie then comes in, says traffic is on fire thanks to Oph's piece, and tells them they need to get the momentum going. So this week when they are pitching their article ideas to Ethan, she wants them to think big and viral, and Lizzie tells Jenna she just got done reading one of her articles about growing up in the age of social media, and she feels she's trying way too hard to sound like a sophisticated know-it-all, and next time she just wants her to write in her natural voice, even if it is a little unpolished. And I like that, she's giving her constructive criticism. I didn't think this was rude. I thought this was basically constructive criticism, and that's what it is. I mean, she's basically just telling her, look, your writing is awkward, and that's genuine criticism. Awkward is a way to, is a way to criticize someone's writing. And Lizzie then tells them that they need an ad sales intern ASAP, and if they know anyone who likes more commission and is driven, type A, and persistent to the point being annoying. And Jenna immediately thinks of Tamara because she doesn't have a job. She's not really doing much, and she tells her she got the job right away. Jenna says she knew she would. They get to work together because she feels she hasn't seen her much, and Tamara says she's going to BFF jail, but that all changes today. And I like the way they showed Jen and Tamara for like half of this episode, because this half it shows that these two are very different, they're on very different paths, but they're still trying to be friends. And Jenna then goes up to Luke, has sex with him in the car, which happens many times this episode, and then we see Maddie arrives at summer school, and Lacey's there, tells him to sit next to her. He says he had a rough semester, which is why he's there, and I like this bonding between Maddie and Lacey, but I will say it did kind of make me feel they're really just trying to give them something to do. Like, it didn't really feel genuine. It felt more like, oh, Lacey's in summer school, okay, that makes sense, but Maddie, it just feels like they're trying to give him something to do, and that's why he was kind of shoehorned into this. And she asked if he had a baby, and she asked if he had a baby, which of course he didn't. She says hers was rougher. I like that scene overall. The teacher arrives. We find out that they are an intro to German. The teacher tells them to look at the person next to them and shake their hand, and tells them that this will be their conversation partner for the next 8 weeks. And right away, Lacey's embarrassing both her and Maddie by saying that she is the best partner. Very funny stuff. I definitely enjoyed that. Sadie's then with a guy she met on Flinger, who's immediately into her, and she says he made a great choice. They're outside Sergio's food truck. We then realize she's just using the guy to get closer to Sergio, who does not fall for her tricks, and then in the process kisses Julia, his girlfriend, as we know, right in front of her, which disgusts Sadie, breaks up with the guy she met right then and there, clearly because, like I said, she's just trying to make Sergio jealous, and, that's not what she says in this episode, but you can tell that's what she's doing. So Tamara tells Jenna she's really nervous. She bought a blazer and she still feels unprofessional and asks if she has any tips for her. And Jenna tells her to not take things seriously. Her coworkers are like that with everyone. They still haven't even invited her to lunch yet. But once they get there, Oph and Ethan are all about Tamara. Like they're loving everything about her. They think she's this amazing girl, and they don't seem to care that Jenna got her there. They invite her to lunch, and Tamara then talks about how Jenna said her coworkers were assholes, but they're not with her. And I love Ethan's reaction of who are these coworkers, Jenna? I thought that was a great reaction. Ethan is becoming definitely one of my favorites. I mean, he's very funny. He's very good at his work, but he's also very funny and very laid back, and I really like that. But he is, very critical, and he is the boss, and I like seeing that. So Jenna and Luke make out and then see that Tamara's pretty much become everyone's favorite and is a natural when it comes to, as she calls it, pretending to care about people's lives. And that's something that Tamara would be very good in as this call girl who pretends to give people advice. And when Jenna comes in, everyone, including Tamara, seems to ignore her. They don't want her there. And basically, very interesting the way that was done, that basically everyone's just ignoring Jen at this point. So Jake comes into work and everyone thinks he has a different job than he does. Probably the funniest scene of this episode and the funniest gag for me had nothing to do with what ends up happening with Jake and Sadie. It's this scene with Jake where he's coming into work and everyone's thinking he has a different job. Someone thinks he's a pool boy, they think he's a bus boy, they think that he's the waiter, like they think he's all these different things, and it's hilarious because we know he works at this club, but what exactly is his job? We don't really know, and I definitely like that. What I do think they're not really doing much of is Jake and Lissa. We haven't really had anything with them in these past 4 episodes. I mean, we know they got together, and we know that they are together, but this episode, it doesn't even seem like they're together right now, and it really feels weird because Jake and Lissa are supposed to be together. We spent that whole episode, well, not the whole episode, we spent that whole chunk of that one episode on how these two got together, and now this episode doesn't even acknowledge them, and I found that to be very weird. So he sees Sadie, asks her why she's going on so many different dates, and she says she's doing it to make Sergio jealous by going to his food truck with someone, and for some reason, he doesn't seem to give a shit, obviously, because Sergio's moved on, as we know, and Jake says if she really wanted him to care, she has to make him think she's in a relationship and do more than just looking online, and she asks Jake if he likes tamales, and right away wants him to pretend to be her boyfriend. Now, Jake should have said, hey, I have a girlfriend, can we not do this right now? And Sadie should know he has a girlfriend because Lissa is her former best friend. We know that Lissa's kind of outnumbered right now, but that was something I kind of wanted to see. I honestly kind of would have wanted this episode to focus more on Sadie and Lissa, because while focusing on Tamara and Jenna, I think it would have made more sense to focus on Sadie and Lissa, so we had a clear theme for this episode. And just, it's not that the Jake and Sadie stuff felt bad, it just felt out of place, because as we know, Jake is with Lissa, and it just wouldn't, I think, make much sense if Jake pretended to be Sadie's boyfriend, especially without Lissa's approval. So, Maddie gets ready to leave the school. Lacey tells him to wait up. She says she knows why he's been ignoring her, and if he wants a conversation partner who's his own age, she's fine with it. And he says it's not about that at all. It doesn't even find her old. He just feels weird around her because of what happened with him and Jenna. And Lacey says she knows all about it from Jenna. And what she says is not what happened. Jenna basically says that she screwed up, and as we know, that's not really what happened. It was pretty much Maddie's fault, and basically, I like the way this was done. So, really interesting there. I like the bonding between Lacey and Maddie. Probably one of my favorite parts of the episode was the bonding between these two. So, Ethan congrats Oath for her post, which has tons of likes, and asks what the next idea will be. And Jenna comes up with this idea of the 5 books that will change your life, and so she can, have a little write-up on the history of Foucault. And Ethan says most people won't even know who that is. I looked up that name, Foucault. He's like some foreign writer. I don't really know. Interesting stuff. But the only people that read him are snoozy little art squirrels. Tamara interrupts them and tells him no one can listen to Violet anymore because she broke all the sales records, and Ethan praised her for it, and Jenna says she has an idea, and Ethan tells her to hold on to it, says they all know there's a lot of talent and idea, but he feels Tamara's the best at it and wants an essay due from her and tomorrow morning, which makes Jenna feel really out of place. One, because Tamara's never really expressed an interest in writing. 2, this is Jenna's calling, and Tamara's kind of stealing her thunder at this point, and especially because Tamara's just starting to work there, Jenna just doesn't understand this. So once again, Jenna and Luke make out. Jenna says she can't do this. Luke asks what's wrong. She says everyone hates her. The one person who's supposed to make her feel better about is too busy hanging out with the popular kids and getting published. Won't even hang out with her. Luke says he's not keeping them a secret because he's embarrassed by her. She says she's sorry. She just has a little PTSD. Says he understands how she feels about Tamara, and Jake agrees to basically He says he understands what she feels. So Jake basically has agreed to pretend to be Sadie's boyfriend for 50 bucks. And like all the Jake storylines this season, this feels very underwritten. It feels like there's something missing. I really would have wanted to see a little bit more Jake and Lissa interaction. And that's the thing this season, is that we've been having these three plots, one with Jake and Lissa, but the Sadie plots have been pretty well written this season. But this is the first one that I don't think is as well written because it's Jake. And it seems like whenever Jake is involved in the storyline the second half of the season, it's very underwritten. And I hope they fix this because I like Jake as a character. I like what they're doing with him. I think putting him with Lissa is a good idea, but they're not doing anything with it. They're not making Jake and Lissa that interesting. I don't really care that they're together, and they haven't really shown much of them. So I can't really say if I like these two together or not because they haven't really shown anything of them. And in this, we showed Jake as Sadie's boyfriend, which right away Sergio can tell that there's something up because they're not acting like a couple. He tells them to take a photo on the wall of lovers, and Jake ends up kissing Sadie on the cheek, which immediately makes her upset because obviously they're supposed to be together. So Jenna asks Tamara about the article she's writing, and I love this scene between Jenna and Tamara. Had this episode ended the way this scene ended, I would have absolutely loved this episode. It would have been one of my favorites. I would have said this episode was incredible, but it doesn't end that way. I'll get into that though. But Jenna asks Tamara about the article she's writing. Tamara admits she doesn't really like to write, but it's the same as talking, and Jenna says it's a lot more complicated than that. Tamara tells her she's meeting up with Oph and Ethan for happy hour, and Jenna says ever since she got back to New York, she's been a total jerk to her between her inside jokes with Sadie and now her hanging out with her coworkers and leaving her out, and she feels like she thinks she's too good for her. And Tamara says she's turned into a total snob. She's sorry she didn't spend the first year of college reading pretentious books with her friends. She says she likes clothes and having fun, so sue her. Jenna says things have changed and they're just different people now. And I love the way that scene was done because, yeah, they are different. They've gone in two very different paths. They're not the same way they once were, and it shows, just like I've said, after high school, not all your friendships last. And this is a very good example of that. And they really had a good opportunity, I think, to explore that here, which we'll get into what ends up happening, though. So Sadie tells Jake she can't believe his pathetic excuse for a kiss. Jake says she wasn't exactly bringing the heat, and Sadie says no one orders 10 tamales with onions on a date. Sergio definitely knows that they're faking, and Jake says he doesn't get why she's trying so hard to make him jealous. She never had trouble with any other guys. She says she wants him to win the breakup, and she thought if any of her friends could make her jealous, it'd be her. And Sergio's watching the whole thing go down. His mom says she didn't think he was worried about Sadie. He says he just misses fighting with her. Jake then kisses Sadie, and Sergio says he misses the making up even more. And we don't know if he thinks they're faking it or not. I'm pretty sure he's thinking that, but you can definitely tell that I think Sergio still kind of misses Sadie. He doesn't want to get back together with her. He's not in a rush to do that, but he does in fact care about her, and you definitely see that. So then we get what probably was my favorite scene this episode between Lacey and Maddie. It just felt the most mature, and that's the thing this hasn't felt this season. I really thought we were going into more mature territory, and it really hasn't felt that way. It's felt a lot like regression from where we were, and this really felt more or less what I wanted. Lacey and Maddie try to have a conversation in German. Maddie asks if, and especially also that scene with Jenna and Tamara, that scene was great too. But Maddie asks if Jenna will be coming home soon. Lacey says she should be, and Maddie says he should probably get going, and Lacey says she knows breakups are hard, but that is just seems sad. And a lot of people said Maddie was very out of character in that episode. You know, what the fuck happened last year, that episode. Basically, Maddie says that Jenna told him about her breakup, but it's not exactly how it went down, and he basically admits that he wanted to transfer, and that he was wrong about it. He even says that Jenna was right to not make him transfer, and he was a total jerk about it, and he thought that's exactly what she told her, and he says it's nice to know she still got his back. Lacey says to stick around and tells her, and they'll tell her themselves. Maddie says she just doesn't feel that they're ready for that yet. Lacey says she'll see him tomorrow, but struggles how to say tomorrow in German, which is very funny. Maddie then leaves, sees Jenna coming home, and I don't want this to be Maddie still has feelings for her. I just don't want that. I feel like they're past that. I feel like Maddie and Jenna are best friends. I've said it before, these two are friends. I don't really see them as a couple anymore. And yeah, it kind of worked in senior year, but that was senior year. They were still being friends. You know, they were still together because it was senior year. They wanted to live those last moments together. They can still be best friends, though, and I kind of do see Maddie as, you know, Jenna's best friend. That's a guy. I definitely do see that, and I want them to go in that direction, definitely. So Jenna goes into her room and sulks, but then Tamara comes in, tells her that everything was right, that they're different, she's a writer, she's not, she doesn't know what to do, asks for her help. A very abrupt scene and a very unnecessary one, in my opinion. To me, it seemed like they only did this because they didn't want to mess with the formula of the show. If you know what I mean, it's that certain shows have certain things that they know viewers like and viewers don't like. A lot of viewers don't want to accept change, and it's clear the writers don't want to accept change either. What I thought that they were trying to do this season was fracture the Jenna and Tamara friendship, and show that these two aren't going to be as close and that they aren't really going to be best friends anymore and that maybe things are going to change and maybe it's going to get to the point where they aren't friends anymore. This is very much what they did with Scott and Styles and Teen Wolf, where it seemed like these two were headed for no more friends, and then all of a sudden, oh, they're back to being friends. And that's the problem with this episode of Awkward. Teen Wolf, at least it took a couple episodes. This took one episode, not even one episode, it took half of an episode for them to be like, oh, we're best friends again. It just felt unrealistic. It felt out of place. I don't like it. And it just felt very underwritten. I didn't understand it, and it really pissed me off. Now, do I like the way they resolved it with Jenna basically getting, to write Tamara's essay? I thought that was fine the way they did it, but I really wanted them to go in a more dark direction, actually have these two no longer be friends. I think it just would have made more sense if they did that, and I'm kind of upset that they didn't do that. So, she says she's sorry for everything she said to her, everything she said to her all summer. She was a total bitch. She understands they can't be friends. Jenna tells her she wasn't that bad. Tamara says she doesn't give a fuck if she knows fancy desires or nightclubs. Jenna says she doesn't care if she knows about writers. Tamara says she just wants to be best friends again. She misses them and she agrees. Jenna then looks at her article. It's terrible, but together they make changes to it and seem to be back to being best friends. And it just felt rushed. It really did. It felt out of place. It didn't feel like it needed to be in this episode. And I really wanted Jen and Tamara to go through some problems. I wanted them to not be friends for a little bit, and I wanted them to kind of think, maybe we can't be friends right now because we're just too different. I really thought that's where they were headed, and that's not at all what happened in this episode. And what happened, I thought, like I said, was regression, and it really kind of pissed me off, I have to say. So they decided to write this article called How to Know Someone is Your Biffle, and for whatever reason, Ethan absolutely loves this article, which I don't understand. I guess it's because Jenna wrote from her heart, but it's not even that big of a deal. And Jenna's ideas, were far more deep than that. And this idea is not that deep at all. But I do understand that she wrote something simple. And Tamara says to give Jenna all the credit since she just paced back and forth and ate chips. And Ethan says that he knew the second she stopped crying so hard, she'd write something great. And I do think it was a good ending, asking her if she wants to go to happy hour. But Tamara says they already have plans. Her realizing that they need to stay best friends, I thought was a good ending. But like I said, I really want Jen and Tamara to actually not be friends. I wanted them to fracture this relationship. It just feels more realistic. Like I said, when you're in college, the friends you have in high school are not the friends you have forever. You say goodbye to them. Maybe not forever. Maybe you'll see them again when you're like 35, when you're like 30 and have kids and, married or something, but you kind of say goodbye to them. You kind of drift apart. That's just how life is. You have a group of people and then you drift apart from them and you're not saying goodbye to them necessarily, but you just aren't as close as you once were. And that would have made sense for Jen and Tamara, because what I thought they were going to do is have Jen and Tamara grow apart, have Sadie and Lissa grow apart, and then have Tamara and Sadie become best friends. That would have made more sense to me if they did that. And honestly, I would have wanted them to end this episode that way. Yes, it would have been tragic, but it would have also been very realistic. And that's why I love that one episode, The Big Reveal, so much, if you guys remember, because that was the episode where Jenna admitted that she didn't want to get back together with Maddie, that they were friends, and then of course they had to get back together, which I think worked, but now it just really feels like they're trying to stick to the norm, and they don't want to go against the norm, which really sucks, and I'm not a fan of that. And then we get that really stupid scene at the end, which really pissed me off. Maddie literally said at the end of this episode, we're not there yet, so why the hell does he look at Jenna's blog, decide to call her, when he literally said, we are not there yet, and Tamara and Jenna bond, Jenna doesn't even realize Maddie is calling. That's how the episode ends, and like I said, half of this episode I really love. I think up to the point where Tamara and Jenna have that fight, and everything goes down there, I really like the episode. Up to that Maddie and Lacey scene is when I really do enjoy the episode. The rest of this episode was very rushed, very underwritten. It just seemed like, oh, we can't actually do anything dramatic because we don't want to ruin the people that like Jen and Tamara's friendship. We know there are a ton of people that love their friendship, and don't get me wrong, I love Jen and Tamara's friendship, but it's very high school. It is. It's very high school. It doesn't really seem like something that carries over into college. It just doesn't seem that way. They have such different interests. It just, to me, doesn't seem like something that carries over, and I really wanted them to kind of break up their friendship and maybe have them be apart for a couple episodes. And I know we've had that happen in season 3, but that was only a couple episodes. I honestly want this to be a long-term thing where they're kind of friends, but they're no longer, especially with this being the final season. It doesn't feel like it. I just am not getting that feel that this is the final season, that things are changing. Nothing's really changing, it seems. I don't even know why this half of the season was necessary. Yes, I'm going to continue watching, but at this point, this half of the season is leading us to nothing. I mean, Maddie and Jenna are going to get back together. Tamara and Jenna are still best friends. Sadie's pining for Sergio. I mean, there's nothing new really happening except for Tamara and Sadie being friends, Jenna at Idea Bin, and her and Maddie growing apart. There's really nothing new happening here. And of course, Jen and Luke are together, but we know that's going to break up soon because, oh, Maddie wants Jenna back, they're gonna get back together. We just know that's gonna happen, and it's really pissing me off. And I really hope that they go in a more mature direction. Those scenes with Jen and Tamara is amazing. That scene was perfect the way they did that, because they really point out everything that was wrong. Jenna talked about Tamara's faults, and now she has been very, just hasn't been there for her, and she's been very bitchy and just been very into herself. And yeah, she has. She's been very much with Sadie, and she hasn't really focused on Jenna very much at all. Jenna's kind of more like an afterthought. But with Jenna, she's turned into this kind of like book nerd, and she's very much into that kind of stuff, and that's something that Tamara should respect. And that seemed like a genuine conflict. Why they made up so fast, I have no idea. It doesn't make sense. I mean, this is a genuine thing that they're going through. The episode's called Best Friends for Never. It's not called Best Friends Forever. It's called Best Friends for Never, and there's a reason why, and that really pissed me off. And also Jake and Sadie, like I said, they're not doing anything with Jake and Lissa right now, and I really want them to do something more there, because we got these two together. We spent half an episode focusing on them getting together, and they've done absolutely nothing with them. But overall, guys, I know what you guys saw this episode. Like I said, I didn't hate this episode. I really did enjoy, like, a big chunk of this episode. It felt very abrupt. It felt very underwritten, just like a lot of the season has. And for right now, this arc, the second half of the season is not doing much of anything for me, I have to say. Again, it's not bad. I'm not saying that this arc of the season is necessarily bad. I think they have some good ideas. For me, they're just not working, a lot of them. Especially with breaking Maddie and Jenna up, feels very unnecessary at this point, because if they're getting these two back together, why the hell we have to break them up? It doesn't make much sense at all. Why we have this whole conflict with Jenna and Tamara, why we even do these things. It seemed like they plan these things, and then they're just like, nope, we're not going to do that. We're not going to go against the norm. We're going to do what the fans want, and that's when you know a show needs to end. When a show is doing what the fans want, and not what they actually feel is right, that's when you know a show needs to end, because they no longer have their own vision of these characters. They now have what the fans want. And that's what fan fiction is for. I've said this before. Fan fiction is there for a reason. You go on fan fiction, there are things that aren't going to make sense because they are fan stories. This felt like that. The first half of this episode felt like they had these great ideas, to break friends up and tell a realistic story about how friends in high school aren't the same as they were in college. And then the end of this episode, no, all of a sudden they're back to being best friends, and that just didn't work for me, and I just didn't believe it. It didn't feel believable. I hope they do something more, because right now, like I said, they're not doing much of anything that different. I'm liking Ulf and Ethan. I'm liking those characters. I think they're good characters. I like the way they've added them into the story. I like them overall. Sully needs to go away. I can't stand Sully. Just get rid of her. I'm glad we didn't see her in this episode, but she needs to go away. Just get rid of her. She's really annoying, and she's not for Maddie at all. But overall, guys, I'm glad you guys saw this episode. Like I said, half this episode really liked. The rest I didn't. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for the path, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.